The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Let's listen as Lorraine LaPointe, coach, therapist, educator, speaker, and founder of Head Heart Synergy, brings together another enlightened guest to inspire and motivate us to move forward, achieve our dreams and desires, so that we experience midlife awakening.
And I'm your host, Lorraine LaPointe. Today we'll enjoy another candid conversation that reveals how to bring back a sense of balance and how to find forward focus. Today, take just a few moments to join us as we explore the possibilities and the perspectives that provide us with greater inner peace, power, passion, and purpose. Because that's what I call living at the edge of fulfillment in a midlife awakening. Well, hello and welcome to our audience around the world. Recently I heard someone say, child trafficking is just a problem found in other places, right? Well, no, unfortunately, it's a problem everywhere. According to the government of Canada, human trafficking doesn't have to involve like shipping containers or crossing borders. And in fact, that's why the United Nations is raising awareness with its World Day against the trafficking in persons to draw attention to this focus. There's a dire need to raise awareness about human trafficking, especially child sex trafficking, because it happens everywhere. As human beings, we have a responsibility to protect each person's individual rights. So what exactly is this human trafficking? Well, I've done a little digging and I've done a little research myself, and it involves recruiting, transporting, holding people as victims to exploit them, to help someone else, or you can help someone else exploit them. So there are multiple layers and players in this human trafficking game, which is not a game at all. Generally, the purpose is either sexual or forced labor. Traffickers get their victims to comply through coercion. And unfortunately, it's definitely happening in your city. It could be happening in your neighborhood. In fact, it might be happening right next door. And most often we're unaware of it. And this is why this topic is an important focus today. So it has a devastating impact on individuals, and many suffer physical and emotional abuse, rape, threats. The coercion is against themselves, the coercion is against their family. It can also involve identity theft, with the theft of passports or the theft of papers that you need, and it can even involve death. But the impact of human trafficking goes beyond just the individual victims. It undermines both the safety and security of everything that it touches. I want to mention that there are three key elements to this crime. First, quite often there's abduction. Secondly, there's fraud. And third, it's an abuse of power or a position of power against someone who's vulnerable. And there are three stages too. Recruiting, we're going to talk about, and that's someone who entices another person into a situation. Then comes coercion, and coercion is the act of deception or control by either threat or violence. And thirdly is exploitation. There's financial or material gain or benefit at the expense of another human being. But before we dive any further in, for those I haven't met before, I'm Lorraine LaPointe. I'm a mindset transformation coach and therapist. And I know that often our greatest regrets in life happen when it's too late to make a real difference in my coaching, I work with compassionate, service-minded, high-achieving women who are like our guest. Many times the women I work with share the habit of giving too much to too many for too long. And their situation, although similar in terms of attitude in some ways, is very different from human trafficking in one key dimension. And that is that the women that I work with tend to have choice. One thing I found is that many women give until there's very little left of themselves, and it's not their fault. Often they've been trained, and we've been trained since to please others and to be giving, and since we were young. And it doesn't really matter if the experience comes from an unstable home life or a history of abuse, or, typically my clients have not been recruited for exploitation, and that makes it different. So each week, in case this is your first time here, we reach out through my company Head Heart Synergy to bring you this program on the Women for Women Network Radio and Talk for TV, because it's our intention to educate, inspire, and explore a variety of ways to live. So whether you're here live or you've come across us at a later time, we invite you to engage and connect with us. This show is about participation. When you hear something in the conversation that you find curious or that shakes you to the bone, let us know by using, just add a comment or a chat on whatever platform you're experiencing us at the moment, unless of course you're driving. Through the giving stories of B1G1, each comment or question creates an opportunity for my company to sponsor a day's worth of fresh water wherever it's needed most in the world. So by your participation, you are helping me to help others as well. And that's so valuable. And your participation is valued as well. And we're grateful to our producer, Roxy, as she supports us to keep things on track. She'll pull up the comments on screen and she'll queue up your questions. So simply add a hashtag and the word question, and you can help us shape this program into something most useful for everyone. So in support of the elimination of human trafficking, the winner of today's contest, because we always run a contest, will be given the opportunity to go shopping on the Black Widow Market with up to a $50 value. And that is sponsored by our guest, Marie Copps. And you'll hear more about the Black Widow Market in a few minutes. And she is the founder. Good morning, Sherry. She is the founder of this amazing organization. And it's important for you to know that the Black Widow Market offers a variety of really exclusive gifts sold in different e-shops. And the profits generated from all the sales benefit Operation Underground Railroad, which is a nonprofit organization that works with governments around the world to liberate children from sex trafficking. And to be eligible for this prize, as we do every week, you simply listen throughout the show. There'll be 5 special words, and then you'll be asked to put all 5 words in the chat or email them. At the end of the show, we'll give you the email address with the subject contest, and we'll randomly draw a winner, and I'll announce that winner next week. So today we're pleased to announce that our winner from last week is John Economacos. And John will receive the video from Baroness V's private collection. Congratulations, John. Now, it's really important to understand the difference between the actions of adults who are seeking and consenting to be involved in the world of BDSM and the lack of consent attached to human trafficking. So I just want to call this to your attention because last week we heard from Baroness V, and her focus is to provide a service. Good morning, John. Her focus is to provide a service that is requested. In other words, she is role-playing, and any perceived coercion on her part is part of the scene enacting between consenting adults. There are protocols in place to protect the participants so no one is harmed. And those people involved in that world are always at choice, and the participation is completely by consent. So I really want to draw this to your attention, how it differs greatly from sex trafficking situations where there's a victim. The victim's been recruited, coerced, violated, and abused without their consent. So it's very different. So let's give you the first word of today. The first word of today is the Black Widow. It's actually 3 words, but we're going to give it to you as a phrase. So simply jot down the special phrase and words as they're announced. And remember to put them in the chat when you're asked at the end of the show. So you've already heard the first one, the Black Widow. So keep track of that. And that's one of the reasons why it's so good to have you here on the Edge of Fulfillment every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, when here on the w4wn.com and Talk for TV. And I also want to thank you, our listeners and viewers, for being with us, either live or in the future. And your mission, should you choose to accept it, good morning, Angeline, is to listen for ideas, thoughts, or feelings that inspire and motivate you. And today, I'm hoping that they inspire and motivate you to join in the support to end human trafficking. So we're going to take a little short break, and we'll connect with our guest who created the Black Widow Market. And you are listening and watching here on the Edge of Fulfillment, W4WN, Women for Women Network, Talk for TV. And we'll be right back after this short break.
Did you know video is the future on content? There are 3 good reasons why video is the future of content. Number 1, videos are often more engaging than simple pictures or music alone. Number 2, it's much easier to tell your story through video. Number 3, because we love to watch video, they go viral much faster. Hey, notice you're still watching right now. See how well it works. Next time we can play your video here instead. Ask me how. Shine online on Talk 4 TV and W4WN Radio.
Hey, are you looking for a brighter future? Wishing for greater calm, clarity, and confidence? What if you knew an inside job was the answer? Your mission: stop the inner burn, gain mental fitness so you get more out of life. Imagine in about 15 minutes a day for just 6 weeks. Come on, we'll show you how. Don't miss it. Just go to www.lorraine.gives/m-fitness and join us right now.
Well, welcome back. Quick recap. We're running the contest this week to win an opportunity to go shopping on the Black Widow Market, which is sponsored by our guest, Marie Kops. She's the founder of this amazing organization. And we've already heard one of the 5 special phrases or words that you need to put in the comments at the end. And just a quick reminder, that was the Black Widow was the first. And now listen for the other words as we continue to explore being on the Edge of Fulfillment on W4WN, the Women for Women Network Radio and Talk for TV. And I am very excited, passionate is the word, to welcome today's guest, because she was born in the Czech Republic. She's always had a flair for the creative, and she's known for her elaborate neck pieces, dazzling jewelry creations, and her exquisite work has not only been seen on Toronto fashion stages, but also abroad. She's an amazing designer, visual artist, and producer, and she's found an awesome way to combine her love of fashion and her love of charity work. When she began to understand the disturbing details and learn that tens of millions of people are trapped in inhumane conditions, she knew she had to act. And Marie uses her skills and talents to build awareness across Canada and the United States. And since last June, she's been busy building the platform called the Black Widow. And we're going to hear lots more about that, I hope. And the mission is to educate, build awareness, and help end the crisis of human trafficking. So I'm going to stop with the introductions because I want to say thank you for being here today, Marie.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Welcome, welcome. Before we dive into the details of the Black Widow project, can I ask you to let's explore maybe a little of your own story? Because you have a fascinating story. Where would you like to start? What would you like to tell us?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. That's the most important part. And second of all, thank you so much for introducing this very, very important topic, which in my opinion, it's not discussed enough in our society. And today is the big day because United Nations are basically acknowledging that there is such problem as human trafficking. So this is the day where we should all look into this a little bit more deeper than we normally do. So my story started in a very small town in west part of Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, basically, before. And I always knew that I like different things. I was always curious about a lot of things. So when I started my journey, it was meeting certain people who were pointing me into different directions. And then I started to explore. And my life started really to take a different turn when I quit my bank job after 10 years, almost 10 years. And I decided to go study English. And I originally wanted to study psychology. So I left that small town and ended up being in Prague, living with my sister, who has one room available in her apartment. So I joined her. And I was around 28 at that time. And I wanted to study psychology because I was always very interested in the fact that I was always curious why people are different, why this person suffers, this person is very happy, this person is very successful, and this person is homeless. So I was always very curious about why people are on their journeys, where they are, like what put them there, like what was the maybe, I don't know, family upbringing or some life circumstances, what took that, turn into their life. So I wanted to study psychology for that reason. I actually didn't do the test, good enough to be accepted. So my plan B was to study English abroad. And I ended up flying to Toronto because something just told me, go to United States, or it wasn't Canada, actually. It was New York, that was the town, the city, I was like very interested in at that time. But my intuition told me go to Toronto. And I ended up here for a good reason. I met my husband here, and then everything was very inspiring because I saw Martha Stewart on TV, and she actually started my whole career.
I didn't know that. So Martha Stewart was
Martha Stewart, yes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, till this day, I have to say that was Martha Stewart because I was with my broken English following her on TV at that time. It was 1999. And I remember I saw her making all kinds of things. And I'm like, hey, this is something I have been doing all my life. And she's built this empire of creativity. So this is something interesting. And because this wasn't a common thing in Czech Republic, former Czechoslovakia, because I was living under a very, very different regime at that time. And we had a scarcity of everything. You couldn't go buy fabric, or you couldn't go buy, like artistic supplies. It was a very, very difficult time, to kind of go and grab those things to be creative. And my mother was always sewing for us. And so I was growing up, in a unique way, because she always made something very couture. So I was spoiled, from the very childhood, basically, because everybody was always adoring our clothing. And I was like, hey, why are they all like so crazy about? Because she made always something unique for us. So then the combination of seeing this in my childhood and then seeing Martha Stewart, that, hey, you can actually really build, something, from your creativity, brought me to the point where I decided to go ahead, and I started doing floral designs, and then I transitioned into fashion, and I studied photography and fine art, and I was soaking everything up, and I just couldn't get enough, and I did a lot of courses here at George Brown College. So anything I needed to do, and I did not know how to, I always was doing some evening course, and I was just like a sponge, enjoying all that stuff.
That is wonderful. And I know that you had a special show where you actually, I think it was called Cashmere, wasn't it? Where you
Yes.
actually, well, tell us about the Cashmere collection.
Cashmere, it's not my show, but what was really interesting was around 2007, I was doing, I was working on the Miss Pageant Beauty, in Czech Republic. I was making 2 really avant-garde gowns, and I was also the florist for the finalist. So I was doing both floral and the fashion. And what happened is I'm walking by the base store department with my daughter, who was like around 6, 7 at that time. And there was this display of these gowns made out of the bathroom tissue, cashmere. And it's a project run by Strategic Objectives. It's a PR agency who does this yearly, and it's in support of breast cancer research, or breast cancer, awareness of. It's around the month of October. So they always recruit 15 designers in Canada, and they give them this box of tissue uncut. It's not the tissue, we use, but it's uncut, so you can do whatever you want with it. And so at 2007, I'm walking around this department store, the window, and I see these beautiful gowns, and I'm like, oh, Lorraine, I would love to be one time the designer making these gowns, because I know it's a yearly, kind of thing. It was a competition at that time. And there comes, 2018, and I was being called, to be one of them. So basically, it was like a dream come true, because I really had the opportunity to experience this wonderful initiative, and important, project. And but I didn't know what I'm walking into, because I spent 500 hours building that gown, because it's all paper tissue, right? So you have to really work, the structure of the gown and everything. And it's not as easy as it looks. So it looks glamorous, but when you are working with the paper and stuff like that, it took me 3 weeks to figure out what to actually do with the paper, because I usually work with lace, and I built my fabric. I cut a lot, and I make a lot of layers, and now here is the flat paper, which doesn't listen to you. It does whatever it wants. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but I was really honored to be part of that project.
That is so wonderful. And to think that you manifest that from 2007, with
Yes.
that little
Yes.
idea,
Yeah.
and then for it to come to fruition in 2018.
And my daughter actually remembered. So that, I think that was the most charming part, in that, because when I was reading the email, I really almost cried. It was like, oh my gosh, here it is. It's so beautiful. And I told my daughter, and she said, I remember that. Yeah, you told me. Yeah, we were walking here. It's like, really? And she was only like 7. So it was beautiful.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So at the beginning of the show, I was mentioning that something else has caught your passion these days. And it's unfortunately not beautiful.
Not at all.
It's actually quite devastating. So perhaps maybe we can make that switch. What brought human trafficking to your attention?
So to be honest, this still till this day, it still shocks me that it goes so deep. It affects so many people, and it is something not really discussed in our society. And I have a lot of question marks, and I'm trying to put the puzzle pieces together, why we are not really severely attacking this issue and not addressing it properly. Why are we focusing only on something and not on this? So what happened is in 2019, I was invited to a small gallery, and there was an exhibition of 4 female artists who were exhibiting their artwork, and it was focused on women. And there was this artist, Eva Friedrich, who was one of the exhibiting, artists. And I saw her art on the wall, and I couldn't stop looking at it. I was so fascinated. And when I came back home, I was thinking, how can we use her art, putting on something, selling, and benefit, and send the money to some charity organization who could benefit, from all this. So all this started in 2019 by this wonderful, woman, Eva Friedrich, who really caught my attention. So I met her at the beginning of 2020 before the pandemic hit, and we discussed, collaboration. And she was in and completely, excited. And then I later on discovered this topic of human trafficking. And I'm like, okay, so now I have it. I have the art, I have the idea, what I want to do, and now I have the cause, which I want to support. And once I started to dig into this, I was just really shocked. And because why this also means so much to me, and I hope I'm not going to tear up, is because as a child, I also experienced something, really bad in terms of, I don't want to say, like sexual abuse, but I was being exposed to something or touched by somebody where as a child, I did not understand what was happening, but I was sure it was not right. And I, as a child, was very, very confused. And I think it affected me as a female. It affected, my life. And till this day, I still think, you still have that trauma in you somehow. So when this human trafficking came to my attention, I immediately got connected with it, because I'm like, these people are doing this to children, to women, to men on such level. And when you see the statistics that the child is raped so many times a day for so many years in a row, you can only imagine how tragic this is to that human being, and how devastating that is, for the rest of their life. If I was traumatized slightly by that act, in my childhood, now imagine when that child is trapped in human trafficking for years and gets out of that, maybe or maybe not, maybe dies. So this was something I was really determined, to do something about. And I knew this is my call. So I immediately started, to apply, all my abilities and talents, into building, this platform. And from that single themed e-shop, I branched out, to different kind of areas. And I also created, one specific collection, which is called the Awareness Collection, with actually the hashtags, save the children or stop human trafficking, and certain graphic, design, where it would support, actually this mission. So if people would be interested in that, we also have, this really, I call it fashion activism, piece, where they actually really are the billboards, for the human trafficking, issue. Because when you walk into a coffee shop and somebody sees your T-shirt, with the graphic design saying stop human trafficking, they may not even know what human trafficking is, as many people actually don't. So they will be like, hey, what is this? And then they maybe go home and do a little bit of a research. That's my hope anyways. So I knew that I have to do something. So later on, I was also asking, how should I call this thing? And I got into a little bit of a meditation, and then the Black Widow came, and I'm like, the Black Widow, Black, it's like that, isn't it like a little bit, and so I wasn't doubting that, because it wasn't something like I was browsing some internet, looking for names. I really went to a little bit of a meditation, or like, asking prayer, and then this came. So I'm like, okay, I'll go with that. And then the Black Widow market, then made sense, because we are basically a market, using this, using all these e-shops, for supporting the organization.
I love this story, and I want to highlight for our listeners and viewers that you have mentioned a couple more of our important words. One is children. Quite often it is children that are exploited. But you also mentioned it doesn't have to be children. It can be children, it can be adults, it can be men, it can be women, it can be absolutely anyone who is coerced and exploited for the benefit of someone else.
Absolutely. It's genderless and ageless, I would say. And
it doesn't always have to include the sex trafficking piece. I was shocked when I was looking at your website to find out that it also is exploiting people for work, for labor, exploiting people for all sorts of things. So when you put it in that context, you suddenly see how huge this issue really is.
Absolutely, it is, and it's I think it's called a hidden crime for a reason, because we are just being conditioned not to even look into that and overlook stuff that we normally should not be overlooking. And as you mentioned at the beginning, it's not happening somewhere far away from us where we think, it's not our issue. It actually is our issue. It's happening so close to us that it's scary, because I listened to a lot of videos where the victims were talking about their stories, and they literally were looking from the house they were being exploited into the house they were living, with their grandma. So it's not something, far away. It can happen on the same street you live, and anybody can recruit you, because if you trust those people, or if you have some type of connection, they can lure you into that and then groom you and condition you, so you don't even know that this is going to turn into something like that. So that's I think, where we need to be more cautious, that it can start very innocently, very like falling in love, and then the boyfriend is exploiting that woman and selling her to his friends or his clients. That's human trafficking as well.
Yeah, John's just saying the underground network, the underground web, the dark web.
The dark web, yes.
Many people aren't aware there's a dark web.
Yes, yeah.
And if you feel that things are, exposed on the normal web, you have no idea what's on the dark web. I've never personally been there, but
and sorry for interrupting. We don't even have to go that deep to the dark net. A lot of recruitment happens via social media. So Instagram, where girls who look like they could be potentially victims of human trafficking, or they can be potentially exploited, are being recruited, by these people. So social media are actually, I would say, the most alarming right now, because during the pandemic, the increase was enormous. Children spend way too much time online, and predators, know how to connect with those. And that can be a 40-year-old person who is talking to a 7-year-old. And within half a year, that 7-year-old person or child, it's taking their clothes off, because they were grooming them, gradually from day one. making friends and being supportive, and you know what I mean, making them very comfortable. And these people then within 6 months attack them and exploit them this way. So that is something I think a lot of parents are not aware that this is happening to their children online.
Well, and it looks, and it can look so innocent at the beginning, like two girlfriends talking,
Yes.
or, playmates, that kind of thing. It can look from the outside quite different to what's happening on intent on the inside. And John just mentioned in that comment that Hollywood movies and TV shows depicting a theme. For example, Big Sky was talking a little bit about it exposed the child trafficking where people are targeted who won't be missed. Those people who are on the fringe of society that, may not be connected deeply with others, but that's not always that whole like containers full of people that we see on TV typically is not where it's at. I mean, that does happen, but it's more startling when I started to look at your the Black Widow site and some other sites. It's more startling to realize that it's one girl who recruits another girl.
Yes.
Truck drivers and hubs like the En Routes. Yes. And they're offered the most interesting things, like I can get you into modeling. I can, I can hook you up with a new community of people who will just adore you. I can, and they play to the needs.
Yes.
The basic human needs.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people take advantage, even in my industry, fashion, and a lot of photographers and agencies. Modeling agencies, it's their the face, the front, of their business. But in the background, they are recruiting, young models, and they are basically luring them into human trafficking, promising them the career, promising them the portfolio, connections. We'll put you over here, but you only have to do this, with our client. You have to please them. But once you do, we'll do this for you. So a lot of time it is very dangerous, and it can lead into a lot of disappointment, and then basically exploiting those people who at the beginning were naive and believed that this is a modeling agency. This is something I can build my career with these people. They can help me. And then they found out themselves into a big trouble, that they are being exploited and sent around, and that's what I think it's tragic, really.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit more about why it's hidden. So it's not just the people who are doing the recruiting that like to hide. It's actually the victims themselves, because there's a sense, and the victim's family. So there's a sense of that disappointment that you talked about. You've been offered something that you've been excited about and you want to get into, and then you're coerced into doing something that you normally wouldn't do. And it might be a big thing like sleeping with somebody. It might be a little thing like, but and Rachel's saying that it's even happened in churches. But then there's a sense of shame.
Yes, absolutely.
The sense of shame is what they prey upon, because you wouldn't want everyone to know that you did that, right? Yeah. And so that you, in order to cover it up, you're pushed further and further into things that you are even more ashamed about. And so it's not talked about.
Absolutely.
It's not, like people say, well, why don't these kids reach out? Why don't they scream and yell? It's it's similar when you talk about sexual abuse with anyone. It's like, why didn't you tell someone? Well, there's such a feeling of judgment.
Yes.
Such a feeling of
fear,
shame.
Also fear.
What are they going to do to my family?
Yes. Yeah, there is absolutely. Yeah, they're threatening them. And that's, I think, one of the first tactiques, they're using. It's basically, if you tell somebody we're going to go after your family, something bad will happen to them. You don't want that for your family. So they know how to hold you hostage. They know how to manipulate you into silencing you and not speaking up. So it takes many years, and victims, on average don't speak, sometimes maybe even after 20 years. So it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of courage to come out and say, what you've been through, because it's just such a psychological damage. I think our mind is just preventing us even from talking, from sharing, because we deeply feel so shameful. Like, how this happened even to me? Like, you know what I mean? You find yourself into this situation, and then you start doubting yourself. Your self-esteem goes down. You know what I mean? And you just start hating yourself, even more. So it's a really, really vicious cycle. It really brings, the human psyche, down.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we can do about it. Really, that's what the Black Widow
Yes,
Project
absolutely,
is all about. And
absolutely.
I absolutely love that you are using fashion in order to start conversations. So that's another one of our special words today, which is fashion, because you have married those two pieces. And Rachel says, how can we get involved? And Heather, schools need to make kids of all ages aware of what's happening. I couldn't agree more, because parents don't know or won't address it. And I would also say that schools,
Absolutely,
because they deal with so many issues, this is one of hundreds of issues that schools try and make children and families aware of. But it's also most important, I think, for parents to like step up and educate themselves, learn about this, because a child quite often is ashamed to talk to a parent. But let's get back to your fashion. Your fashion is, you use the word billboard. I love that. I love that metaphor, or oh, it's not even a metaphor, it's the truth. You are wearing a statement.
Yes. I always say, if these our supporters will be brave enough to have that T-shirt with that hashtag, and then people will be turning their heads, and looking at them, that's the best way, how you can do it, because you don't have to speak to anybody. You don't have to explain anything to anybody, but you do one very important thing, and that is you plant a seed. And that seed can grow into something. And that is the beauty, of awareness. We can plant seeds, in people's minds. And then when they see something like that next time, they'll be like, hey, I already seen something like that. So basically, that's how I want to, that's how I want this platform to work. I am not forcing anybody to buy anything from us, but if they learn about this and they can maybe share that with their circle, or share something on their social media, that can lead, into more awareness, and that can always help prevent, human trafficking, or even help some victim of human trafficking. So we can actually, pull somebody, from it, so away from it. So that is something, I wanted to do. And that is build a strong awareness. And I like, your point. I think it should be part of our curriculum at school, where we should be teaching children, that some of the behavior they may come in contact from adults or even their peers may be toxic, maybe not appropriate, and they need to know how to deal with it. So they need to take, they need to put that into the child's mind, that it's okay to share that with somebody else. Do not hold it, in you, because I think, that's what happens to the child. They come across, maybe physically or online with somebody like that. And because they're in such a shock, they don't share with anybody. And it's up to the parent to look into that child, or look at the child and say, hey, something's not right, with Jane. Jane is acting up a little bit. And then, they can see, maybe some self-harm, or something, eating disorder or depression. So they should always be aware, of those signs, that because they always signal something not right in that child's mind. So that's one important thing, I think you mentioned.
The other thing is that sometimes it's not acting out, it's acting in. Children get quiet.
Yes,
Children,
as well.
I grew up in the age where they said children should be seen and not heard.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I'm sorry, children should be seen, and
Yes.
they need to be heard.
Yes, absolutely.
Because to teach a child to be seen and not heard is how you actually train them to be perfect victims,
Absolutely.
to be exploited and recruited.
Yes, because they will not say anything.
Because children need to have that feeling that when something is wrong, they can shout it from wherever they are, and someone will pay attention and someone will care.
Yes, I think it's the whole thing, how society is set up, and I think we need to look at that and fix, some of these things so we can function, a little bit better.
Absolutely. And I can't believe the time has gone so quickly, Marie. This is such an important issue, and schools are doing something. Schools are teaching children that they have a right to say no. Sometimes parents don't like that very much because they practice it at home and they practice it at school. But when I was a principal, I would not consequence a child for saying no. If they say no to something, there's a reason why they're saying no.
Absolutely.
And I encouraged my staff to teach them that if you can teach a child to say yes, you can teach a child to say no.
Important.
No is a very important little word. And teaching a child to be aware of that hinky feeling, that sense that something isn't right.
We can tell. That is the beauty of our soul, that it recognizes what is not right and what is wrong, what is right. So as I said, me being around maybe 10, experiencing something which I was like, I think this is really, really wrong. I think every child knows that. But if they are being threatened against speaking up, that's another issue.
Yeah. And because we're coming so close to the end of the show, I want to give the last 2 words.
Yes.
Special words for our listeners and our watchers. And that is healing and transformation.
Yes.
All is not lost. Even after 20 years of human trafficking, even after being exploited for 20, there is healing available and there's transformation. And we encourage anyone who feels that they may be in a situation where they're being exploited or coerced, reach out. Please find a way to communicate and let people know what's going on. You can't get away from it by yourself, but you can with support. And if for those who have the means, jump on over to Black Widow Market, grab a t-shirt, or just give some support. Don't be afraid to talk about this issue. Or if you are afraid, wear it. You've got a whole body that's a billboard, and you may just save a life.
Absolutely. That's my hope. And if our platform saves one child's life, or anybody in that matter, my mission would be fulfilled. It's like, this was so worth it. That much work I had to put in, and joy as well, of course. But if we can save one child or one life, that's the most beautiful thing in humans, experience. I think that you help somebody who in that situation is praying that somebody come and liberates them.
Well, thank you, Marie. You are an inspiration to us all.
Thank you so much.
And I challenge everyone to go and look at the blackwidow.org and to put the 5 words that we've talked about today in the chat. That's children, the Black Widow, fashion, healing and transformation, and or send it to support@headheartsynergy.com. Email that to me with the word contest in the headline so that I can easily pick it out. And perhaps you'll be the winner of that wonderful $50 support that you've offered. Thank you so much for Marie. And
thank you so much. Thank you.
You're
and
welcome.
All the best to everybody. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And I hope this has at least stirred up some conversation. I am your host, Lorraine LaPointe, reminding you that this is the edge of fulfillment. And at the edge, you always have a choice. You can stay on the edge, always getting what you've always got, or become just a little courageous, move beyond the edge, and help yourself or others get what they really want or need. So we'll see you next week. Bye for now.